everyone, welcome back.
Hi.
Cade me the Vulture. Hello. You might be asking yourselves why we're uploading on a Thursday. Our schedule is Wednesdays usually, but we have started a new series. What is that new series? I can hear you screaming at your screens. That new series, my friends, is called Therapy Thursdays.
Insert jingle here.
Yeah. And basically the concept is that we want to give ourselves, our normal episodes are 40 minutes long, we want to give ourselves maybe a little bit more time to touch on some maybe issues that we think deserve a little bit more time, that we can dive a little bit deeper into. And the reason it's called Therapy Thursdays is because that's how we're treating it. We want to get to know ourselves in this process more. We want to learn much more about Ireland, Irishness, Irish culture. And we, at the moment, they're on once a month. And we hope that if you like it and you interact and you tell us that you like it, that will become more frequent. But right now, once a month. Why are we doing it? We want to connect, as I said, connect more to ourselves, connect more to our culture and our heritage. And yeah, you might notice that we've got somebody with us. Yeah. Shauna, who is this lady? Tell us.
This is Patricia. She's a mental fitness coach, PA coaching. We'll add all of her links. Well, I won't. Caitlin will add all of the links to the things. She's a poet. She's done lots of spoken word over the last year and a half. And most importantly, she's Caitlin's friend, and I'm just getting to know her. So yeah.
It's great to be here.
Yeah.
Welcome. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this.
Yeah.
First of all.
Thank you for asking me.
And she has a little bit of Irish,
A
guys.
little bit of Irish.
Yeah. Just like us. She doesn't know everything, but we're learning as we go.
Exactly.
So she'll share what we know, or she'll share what she knows. And we'll absorb it, and
yeah, and we hope you will as well.
Yeah.
So Patricia, tell us
who you are, what you do, why you're here.
Well, just to mention, I also, obviously I grew up in Ireland, so I learned it at school, but obviously I never spoke it since then. And didn't speak it outside of school when we were growing up. But mental fitness coach, all about positive intelligence, emotions, getting in touch with your emotions. The poetry is relatively new, as you said, kind of 14 months around London, Hammersmith Irish Centre, Camden Irish Centre, doing spoken word. Have thoroughly enjoyed it, and my coaching process brought out a poet in me that I didn't even know was there. I always kind of wrote but for myself, and that journey has been so beautiful with regard to creativity, and that's now what I'm all about. So the poetry and the writing, and I'm also a singer, so I also do, I don't know if you've ever heard me singing.
I have heard you sing, yeah.
And so obviously my Irishness and my forte is Irish folk, and I grew up, and I remember, I think it was the first time the teacher called me in, this beautiful teacher who died too young, and she called me and she goes, "Can you sing a song?" And because I was number 6 of 7 kids, and I sang the song, and she went, beautiful voice, and I remember thinking it was the first time anyone had ever complimented me, and I was like, and then she was doing a Scoring an Og, which is an Irish singing competition, and
say that word again, sorry.
Scoring an Og.
Scoring an Og.
It was an Irish singing competition, and she was looking for singers to put together, but it always reminds me of the first time, like the compliment, and I think I was probably about 7 or 8, maybe a bit older, 8, but I just remember that moment of like that smile, like when she said, "Beautiful singer." Obviously she knew from my family, we're a kind of family of singers. Anyway, so it started in the choir and stuff, so singing, and I've done recently some Irish singing in the Irish language, which I love, because like that revival of the Irish language is very important to me, so I use it where I can, and I'm even throwing in a bit into my poetry.
Okay, so speaking of Patricia's poetry and spoken word, we're very lucky that she's going to share a poem on the podcast today called "The Old Bog Road." Before you say it, do you want to add anything about it? Explain what it's about?
Well, I think in Ireland, the peat land, the bog, and the turf for the winter it's part of the Irish culture really. But I think everyone kind of lives near Bog Road and the countryside, and I never really liked the bog growing up. But when I went home at COVID, I went home for Christmas in 2021, and I hadn't been home for a year because of COVID, and it was a long year of not being at home because I go home a lot. But I ended up staying for 4 months at home, and I started going down the old bog road where I went as a child. But the end of the bog road was our bog where we had to work, so I never really liked it. So actually, it was my mum's dog at home. We were going for a walk, and there was other dogs in the countryside. So I wanted to take him somewhere quiet so he could be more free. And I ended up falling in love with it. And I came back, and a few weeks after coming back, I wrote this poem. And it's called The Old Bog Road. And then, because I want to big up the Irish language and the revival of it, and I love it, it's you know, it's just
gorgeous language.
It's
beautiful.
It's actually even coming to meet me again, really.
Yeah.
It's interesting because everywhere I go, I seem to be meeting people who are helping to revive it. So I decided to put some Irish into my poetry. So Caitlin's going to put the translation. It's not a lot, it's only some bits and pieces. So I thought I'd do my bit for putting in, and I'm hoping as the years go along, I'll be able to maybe one day write a full poem in Irish.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Oscar, yeah.
It's so lyrical, it like matches the flow of what you're saying.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful language. So I'm hoping one day I'm going to go back and do lessons myself.
And can I just say, me and Shauna are still going with Duolingo, guys. We're still learning.
Yeah.
We're still on
I went to Norway for 2 weeks and I was sat on the train learning Irish.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Colleen, you have inspired me to download Duolingo.
Yay!
Thank you very much.
Duolingo sponsor us.
Yes.
So absolutely, definitely. I didn't know that I could even get Irish in Duolingo. So thank you very much for that. So that will help me, I think, as well. But also, getting my tongue around the words, sometimes my memory is not that good, but when somebody tells me, obviously my memory kicks in and I can say them better. So I'm hoping that I will revive my school Irish. And the Old Bog Road. The Old Bog Road was where I never wished to be, as it meant aber crua for everyone and me. I never wished to go there. It was never any fun. I never went down that road in a fooster or any sort of run. Only with my lava in me pockets, kick and cluck a biog ahead of me, dilly-dallying all the way, much preferring those summer days when we were saving hay. But now that I am here, still unshocked, having stood the test of time, the Old Bog Road is a joy to me, as I walk it now, somewhat past my prime. It has a breeze, an energy, a whisper through those trees, as I hear the wind whisper in a soft, calm, airy breeze. It's like it's taken me back to the memories of my childhood and the things that we recall as bad, but now bring only good. Learning lessons from the past and then moving positively on, walking down that old bog bohereen, I now sing a merry song.
Yay! That always makes me feel like
it is
teary-eyed.
emotional,
I'm like,
isn't it? It's very emotional. It's so lovely. Yeah,
but that always makes me feel like, oh, maybe I should go back to Ireland. I'm not from Ireland.
So for me, I think it was a bit of therapy as well. Like going someplace where I remember as a child being a bit like, oh, do I have to? But and then I brought the Old Bog Road into other poems as well. So it's now when I go home, the first place I want to go is for a walk with Homer, our dog, down the bog road, and we both love it.
So, that's so lovely.
And again, it's just that those things we remember from our youth, and then all of a sudden everything changes and it's more positive.
Yeah, it's kind of like the resentments turned into enjoyment, like the nostalgia. You're like, wow,
you look at it with
and carefree was
through
it
different
then?
eyes, sort of, don't you? You've got a completely different perspective on life.
And like all those years that I would never have thought about going down the Old Bog Road for a walk, really, you know, it wasn't the place. So yeah, I'm glad you like it.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. It was lovely.
It was a pleasure.
So we really wanted Patricia to share that poem because it was very relevant to our topic of today, which is, and it's a big one, guys, and it's not an easy one to discuss. There's no one straight answer, but we're all going to give our thoughts, and please give yours too in the comments, etc. But the topic of today is Irish identity. What is it? What is Irish identity? Who has it? Who doesn't have it? What can it be boiled down to one word or sentence? What, you know?
Yeah, how does the sentence plastic patties fit into that? We were talking about that earlier.
Yeah, you know, all of these, there's so much to discuss around Irish identity. So that's what we wanted to talk about today. And the reason that we asked Tricia to join us on this Therapy Thursday series is because, as you mentioned in your introduction, a big part of your work is also positive intelligence, mental fitness. And we thought that you would be a great person to have on Therapy Thursdays because you are in that realm of wellness and mindset. And yeah, we just love
it's like the perfect clash of both worlds. You have that rich Irish heritage, which you've navigated throughout your life, and that's flowed in different ways. And then, you have the mental fitness.
Yeah, and I think one of my missions in life is to kind of lift the stigma of around mental health and mental wellness. And I like to call it mental wellness because there's really, it's kind of, as the time goes on, thinking that there's no problems. We are living life. It's a human experience, a human existence. We kind of have a tendency to go, there's something wrong with me. There's a problem. But in actual fact, I've learned that kind of we can inadvertently, unwittingly feed problems and what we feed grows. So it's kind of shifting over to that, where do we want to go, where do we want to be, and that positivity, that positive mindset, and feeding that instead, and what you feed grows. So again, it's not easy, it's a journey, and it's been a beautiful journey for me, which I will share. I'm happy to share my journey of being in Ireland, growing up in Ireland, going to school in Ireland, being on a farm, being in the wide open countryside. I loved the farming life. I loved the wide open countryside, but also, I suppose, looking back, the small town mentality was a bit too closed in for me. Getting to know myself from the inside out has been the journey, and I realize now why it was a little bit too much. I used to kind of say I felt a bit suffocated by it because the small town mentality has a certain identity, a way about it, and I felt but also the world was like, I remember as a child on TV, or if anyone new came in, I'm like, I'd be there. I want to know everything. Tell me everything about the outside world, because when you live in that isolation, it's a bit with cows.
I know with the cows.
They make great friends because you could talk to them. We used to name them you could talk to them and they wouldn't utter a word.
The best
utter a word.
She's a
change the
comedian. That's your list of repertoire.
I've never heard the word mental fitness though, like mental fitness coach, and you just saying like how you to reflect in to understand why it was so suffocating. I think it's true. Like, it's fitness. You're using a muscle. You're not going to use that muscle the same amount at different times in your life, but you can like develop it and build it. And I just really like that language.
Yeah, and I have to say, sorry to interrupt you. I've actually worked with Tricia doing positive intelligence and mental fitness as a program, and I have to tell you that this isn't hyperbole. Like, it's life changing, and I mean that when I say that it's life changing. It is hard work, and you sort of have to maybe go to places that are a little bit difficult to go to, but it is absolutely worth it. And having Tricia to sort of, I would describe you as a mentor in the process. I would say that you really are guiding and walking through the process with your clients, and it was unreal. So if anybody is ever thinking about, you feel like you need a change in your life, there's just something not quite right, I would, with confidence, very confidently say to you that this can improve your life. And if anybody was thinking about it, I will put all of Tricia's details, her website, and all of the information about that stuff below. But thank you to you for bringing it into my life, because it is honestly amazing.
Well, thank you for having faith in me as a coach, because when I met you first, you were when I was training, you were one of, we needed to have volunteer clients.
I was a little guinea pig. I was a guinea pig, guys.
You agreed, and 2 years later you come back and asked me for my help. So thank you very much for coming back, because you went to Canada, we lost touch for a bit, and then you came back and we had a conversation, and then we met, and then you wanted more coaching. So I'm privileged to help people to move forward. As you said, it's coaching, mental fitness coaching, but the way you mentioned mentoring, I suppose our journeys were similar. So that mentoring as in when somebody is on the same path as you and somebody is had the same journey and you can guide a bit more, whereas coaching, facilitating deeper thinking, but you're the expert in your life. It's your life, it's your choice of how you live your life, you know. So, but if you do want to shift over to the positive mindset, mental fitness is the way to go. But you brought it up, and thank you for bringing it up, because physical fitness, we put a lot of emphasis on the body.
Yeah.
Now, I know I've struggled with weight over my lifetime and emotional eating. I have a poem called The Fridge, which speaks around that. And physical fitness, going to the gym and all of this. But since I've worked on mental fitness, and the coaching journey has helped me from the inside out, and that foundation of knowing what my emotions are doing. Like I used to eat my emotions, basically. That was around the Fridge poem. And the mental fitness, I feel, is that foundation that it makes it easier to go to the gym. It makes it easier to do this kind of stuff. So it's new phrase to a lot of people, but it's powerful because the mind over matter in a way.
Yeah.
So go to the mind first. We live in a superficial world, but the good thing is the balance between both, the depths of us and the superficial world, getting that nice balance, because reality in life is in life,
you know.
But knowing our realities and our truths and where we come from obviously has a lot to do with that, and that's what we're talking today, identity and everything surrounding that. But I love the way you said to me, you really put me thinking this week, define Irishness.
I know. What a big question.
It put me thinking, and it was interesting because I would have thought that it was something that somebody else would say, that I wouldn't use Irishness as that phrase, that word.
Yeah.
That somebody else would be saying, oh, that's Irishness.
Yeah.
Looking in at somebody Irish, you know? So, but I love the way you facilitated my deeper thinking.
That's the goal, guys.
That is, you're becoming a bit of a coach. So that defining Irish. So
yeah. Like I said, that was the big question of the month. What is Irishness? So I am going to throw that question to you now, Patricia. Actually,
and there is no wrong answer. Like, let's just preface this: what you define as Irishness.
Exactly.
There is no wrong answer.
Yes.
Your definition is 100% your definition.
We
it's right for
understand
you. Yeah.
that everybody has their own view on these things, and we understand that identity is something very personal to people, but we are just opening up the conversation. And like I said, please join us in the comments.
And I bet you all three
guys.
of us have different answers.
I was going to say,
you'll start, but we'll answer it too.
I'm going to throw in a curveball here, and I'm actually going to skip you for a minute because you are Irish, you grew up in Ireland. So my interest is going to be focused on you, Miss Shaunity. And I am going to ask you...
Sonia's little lost soul with no hope.
What is Irishness to you, and what is Irish identity, and how does that factor into your own identity? Tell them your story. Why is identity such a issue for you?
Because Mum has itchy feet and we move all the time. So I've lived on 3 different continents.
You were born in?
I was born in Australia.
She's born in Australia, guys.
G'day. Then we moved back to England to be with family for a little bit, and then we moved to Canada. Some things happened. We were supposed to be in Canada for 6 months before moving somewhere else.
You stayed for
15 years. And now I'm back in the UK.
Yeah. And do you feel like...
Don't ask me what nationality I am, because I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
But to me, Irishness is grandma. Like, it's, I didn't know her in the sense that I remember her. I was so little when she passed. But it's my way of remembering her, like all of her traditions and like the stories we get told at dinners, and like that she used to make soda bread, or that, you know, you walked in and before you could say anything, the kettle was on, and stuff like that. So that's how I hold on to her. And I think that's how I hold on to all my grandparents, because I didn't know my dad's parents, my grandparents on his side.
I always forget that. Yeah, you did.
Yeah, they passed away before I was born. And I didn't know they were Irish until you said. So
I am a bit obsessed with ancestry. I've done my own family tree, and I've started doing Shauna's a little bit, and we found that her on her dad's side, we knew he was of Irish stock anyway. But on her dad's side,
Patrick, Anthony, Michael.
Yeah, your grandmother's side, your dad's mum has Irish heritage from County Mayo.
Yeah, which is nice. And I think the older I get and the more I transition to wanting to have my own family, and just that my dad's not here and none of our grandparents are here, it's my way of holding on. It's like an easy way to define myself.
Yeah, and it's like roots. It's like, and
I think it shaped how our parents grew up a lot.
100%. This is something that I was going to say. I feel like Irishness in the diaspora, or when you're of Irish heritage, or you didn't grow up on the island of Ireland, you will of 100% have been, your life will have been moulded in some way by Irishness, whether it be the way your parents were raised. You know, our parents were raised by an Irish mother who was a strict Catholic, and that has completely shaped their view of the world, the way that they see things.
They're superstitious, they have a fear of God,
all of these things, and that obviously, you can't help it, becomes then part of you. That then gets passed down to you. And I'm a little bit different to Shauna in that I did know my grandmother. I was, I'm older than Shauna, so I have very strong memories of her. Yeah, very clear memories of her.
Her and her dog.
What's the dog's name?
Tina. She had two. Tina and Jill, Jack Russells.
Yeah.
Oh, Tina.
And there is the cutest picture of Caitlin, and I don't know why I remember this.
Screen.
Yeah, of her in red welly boots,
red wellies, holding
this dog. And
she was my little best friend, but I opened the back gate for her once and she ran away, and we never were to see her again.
So
I didn't get in trouble though. It was fine. I was 3. I wasn't to know.
Dogs came and went in our family.
I'm very sad.
I know, poor Tina. But yeah, so Irishness to me really comes from, it's really about ancestry, and it's really about, for me, a lot of people don't think ancestry is a big deal. They don't think of their ancestors at all, but for me it's really important. For some reason, I can't help but think of all of the people that came before me. On all sides of my family, I feel this way about my British ancestry as well, that it's just, there's such a strong feeling in me of like, I wouldn't be here without those people that came before me. And if any single one of those people hadn't existed or had been changed, I wouldn't have been able to exist. So for me, ancestry is so important. I try to live a life that is as exciting as possible and is as fun as possible. And I try to do as many things as I can, because I am very aware of all the people that came before me.
And the
struggles that they faced, and they didn't have those opportunities, and they worked really, really, really hard just so that I can now, exist and have my life here.
We often say, oh, Grandma, I'm so proud. Like, we are not the smart cousins in our family, shocker.
Well, you're much smarter than me.
But in the grand scheme of things, our cousins, have done very well for themselves, and it just is nice to reflect, to be like, sat in that very small council estate house with all those kids, shipping fresh shamrock over on St. Paddy's Day. Like, she'd be so happy now.
Yeah, she definitely would.
Big bunches of fresh shamrock.
That reminds me of an envelope with little Oasis thing. I mean, they used to do that not so much in later years, but that brought back a memory there for me.
Yeah.
A kind of a jiffy bag thing.
Yeah.
Of shamrock in it.
Yeah, and my mum used to say, you put this big, beautiful bunch on, you didn't want to do it because you didn't want to be the Irish kids at school.
Yeah.
And then they go to school and they come back and be all wilted and...
Yeah.
Didn't last very long.
Yeah.
And you saying that they didn't want to be the Irish kids at school is another big reason for me. I feel like you would probably know this yourself, Patricia, coming to the UK. I'm not sure what it was like during the time that you came here, but it's common knowledge. Everybody knows that migration and Ireland sort of go hand in hand, don't they? Immigration is a big part of Irish history, and people that immigrated over here to the island of Britain weren't very well received. There was a lot of anti-Irish sentiment, which caused people like mine and Shauna's parents to feel a kind of shame about their Irishness, and they didn't really want to acknowledge it. They wanted to just fit in with Englishness as much as possible. Very much suppress it. And for me now, we live in a time where, I'm not saying anti-Irishness doesn't exist. It definitely does. But I feel very, very proud of my Irish heritage, and
There's
I
a
think
strong spirit of like revival.
yeah, exactly. And I feel like I don't have an ounce of shame about it. I like shout it from the rooftops. And for me, doing this podcast and getting more in touch with my Irishness, I just think of my grandmother watching us and being like, "You go, girls! Like, don't let them shame you. Like, you're not." Do you know what I mean? I just feel that is like my motivation to keep going.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is what.
Yeah, it's
identity.
almost like that anchor. Like it's what's tying you.
That's
to
exactly, and that's
life.
a really good word. Isn't
you can
it?
have all of these experiences.
It's beautiful to have those anchors and see the good.
Yeah, and do you feel?
Yeah, what's you back to you now? What's your
what is Irishness to you? Because you have a much stronger connection to Ireland than we do. And we're talking about anchors. Do you feel any anchored to the land or the land of Ireland, the island of Ireland?
And
itself?
obviously, the anchor can change. It might not last forever. So
yeah.
Nothing lasts forever. There's nothing more constant than change.
Yeah, that's very true.
My thing.
Yeah. But can I just pick up on one thing there?
Mm-hmm.
So, this is Therapy Thursday.
Oh God, I'm like.
This is what we brought here for, guys. She's going to therapize us right now.
So this is a space that we're creating, and for the viewers, of the self-deprecating talk. Like, and I just picked up a little bit.
I'm like, what did I say?
We're not the smart cousins.
Well, we are, but we're. Yes. I'm so proud of our cousins, like our baby cousins.
The intelligence is. There's many different intelligences now, and I say this because I feel, and for myself personally, the self-deprecating talk of Irish people as well, and we can bring a lot of stuff with us. And my thing is like letting go of the stuff that weighs us down and that's heavy, and seeing the beauty, as I said. So I just wanted to take the opportunity that the comparison. Comparison is the thief of contentment. So they are smart in their way, and their brain is super brain in their way. You're smart in your way, and we will talk, maybe not today, but we'll talk about the different intelligences and things that I didn't learn growing up in Ireland at school, and maybe not a lot of people in other cultures did either. So we'll leave that for another day. We'll go back to the topic.
She's like, let's just.
Sorry, I have a habit of digressing. Anyone that knows me, the tangents are there. But the identity, and I just love this, and I love hearing both of you speak. And can I just say that when you were talking about moving, when I grew up in Ireland as a young girl, if I heard that story, I'd be like, I want to have that. Because the TV was the way I saw. I remember watching Australia, Fields of Fire, Dirtwater Dynasty. That was my place to go. Then Home and Away came along. And I'm like, I couldn't miss any of these because it was so far away, but it was so different. Yeah. So your story, I wanted it to be mine.
And you would have loved Trisha.
I would have, if we could swap, I would have survived.
So we would have.
My goal is to be on a farm in Ireland. Yeah. That's where I want to retire.
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody here. And one day we will get you. Yeah. You'll have to come and visit my brother's farm.
Yeah.
Yes, his farm.
I won't mind. Might not leave though.
Yeah.
Don't make her too comfortable. Don't kick the tea on. Keep the kitten off the bottom. So again, like going back to growing up and how we see the good and the bad, or we can get consumed by the bad and what we don't like, and we see the world outside and we want that. But define Irishness. I mean, I suppose like it's everything that makes up culture, identity, traditions, the religion you mentioned, and it's a bit of all those mixed, and all of those have their own facets underneath them. So one thing that came up for me when I was hit with the define Irishness was sense of humor. And I actually asked a friend of mine, Marissa, which we'll talk about at some point as well, because she has an Irish diary. And I said, how would you define Irishness? But what came up for both of us is the sense of humor.
The crack.
Now, I love my sense of humor and the fun. And I was doing a talk the other night. I said I had a PhD in having fun. And I want to get that out to the world. But that not taking yourself so seriously, and I think Irish people are great at that, and it kind of hits as well on the self-deprecating talk. Oh, somebody admires something. That whole thing, or somebody says you look nice. Not being able to take a compliment, and I was the world's worst. But in part of my coaching journey, my growth and development, I have now mastered the art of going, thank thank you.
That's hard though.
It is
Yeah,
hard. If
that
that's
is
something
hard.
that is ingrained into you and embedded into you and it's been part of the culture
Yeah.
you've been raised in, which anybody who knows anything about Irish culture, if you look at it from the outside, well, you that is your culture, you experience it every day. You will, that is like for me, that what you said is a very definitive thing about Irish people. They will not take a compliment. They don't, it makes them kind of viscerally uncomfortable. I feel like some people.
I think it's that like salt of the earth, like not stopping in and being like, yeah, I am doing a good job. It's just like the keep grinding.
Yeah.
I met a friend of mine yesterday. She's a coaching client as well, and Irish, second generation Irish, and I admired something, and she said, "Thank you," and I gave her a big hug.
I was going to say,
yeah,
because
well
it
done.
is difficult.
It's huge.
It is challenging, and she was like, "Yeah," and we talked about this very subject, and I'm like, amazing, because we do have that default system of like, it's nothing, or
or the deflect.
Now I'm all about celebrating everything and the little achievements plus the compliments we get. Why not? It's the kind of thing, or do you believe what they're saying, or the compliment is true? It doesn't matter. I often said to people, if it's true, brilliant, take it on board and say thank you. If it's not true, let the person who says take responsibility for the untruth in a way. Take it and gracefully. And I'm delighted that I have learned to do that, because now that was a big thing for me growing up. And the sense of humor, then, that's all tied into that. So not taking ourselves very seriously. However, there's kind of like an asterisk, like a footnote that came up for me. Generally in the company of others, that joking, not taking life so seriously, when we're on our own, there can be a weight that we are not able to share with other people. So that can cause seriousness. And I even feel a little bit of memory of that myself. That out in a group of people, being the funny person, being the self-deprecating, and wanting to insult myself sometimes before anybody else got in there, kind of getting in there before other people got in there.
It's like when you get up and you're like, oh, watch out, here comes clumsy or whatever. Yeah,
absolutely.
Before you even bump into something.
Relate that very, very much to this podcast. The reason that, for that exact reason that you said, is the reason that this podcast is called Plastic Paddies. It's because I've seen so much in my life, people of Irish heritage, who identify with that heritage. I've seen so many times people say to them, no, you're not Irish. And, maybe they aren't to a degree, but if that's how they feel and that's how they identify, it feels almost mean. It feels a little bit mean to sort of tell them, no, you aren't. And I know that for a lot of people, especially for the generation above us, that was kind of used as a tease or a taunt to call people plastic paddies. It was like a bit of a, you're not what you say you are. And I sort of had the thought of like, well, if we say it about ourselves first, then nobody can use it against us as like an insult. And for me, it's kind of worked, because in my mind now, I've really embraced that title, and I've been like, it's sort of, we're like poking fun at ourselves because people are probably going to say it anyway. And it's been a way for me to kind of make peace with the fact that some people are going to think that, some people are going to think that, and it's not up to me to change everybody's mind. You know what I mean? So yeah, I don't
think it's possible to change.
You can't, exactly,
mind. And
exactly.
This is the learning that it's the person in the mirror, really.
Yeah.
Like the self-identity. Because really, there's a lot of judgment in the world and criticism and all of that, but should we be taking anyone's identity away from them? When self-identity, what we identify with. So I hear what you're saying. And what it brings up for me is that I feel I kind of ran away from Ireland because I didn't fit in a way with where I came from. Even though I loved it all my life. I loved the farm. I loved it. There was so much I loved about it. But there was a not fitting in. And not belonging, which I've learned in my coaching journey. The belonging is part of our emotional health and our mental health and our emotional thriving, because survival is very much the physical level of clothes, shelter, food and water and all of that. But our emotional health and the emotional intelligence and positive intelligence that I do is around that thriving. We can be successful and then we hit unhappiness and we're like, oh, because it's all external. Whereas if we find it inside us, so it goes back to the self-identity. Really, who is anyone to take self-identity away from anybody? We're all trying to survive in the world. And so my question would be, discussing this, is that I, at a young age, was trying to get out of Ireland. I've met people that were given arm and leg to get into Ireland and live there and experience it. And so my question is, how Irish was I?
Yeah.
In a way, even though I had the blood running through my veins and I wanted to, the ancestry.
Yeah.
I probably will just have 98% Irish. I'm hoping I have 2% Viking.
I was
hoping
for that.
But in a way, I hate saying that because of what the Vikings done. But there's part of me I want to be a Viking woman, shield maiden.
I hoped for that. I was like, the blonde. I was like, I must be Swedish. There must be something. None. The island of Britain and the island of Ireland. That is.
Yeah.
I know. I really want to do mine and see what happens.
We do. You do need to.
Just a little digress, and
I think you'll be. I would be surprised if you weren't 100% Irish. Do you know that?
I wouldn't be surprised either, but I'm just the 98%.
She just wants a little 2%.
Listen, 98.8. I'll just take the
the 0.2%. That'll do.
Okay, 99.9. But the funny thing is, I want to bring, and I mentioned Kevin on Friday night. I did a friendship talk in Shanakiha. We'll talk about that another time. But
which means storytelling.
Shanaki is storyteller in Ireland. Iha is night. This wonderful guy, Kieran Gaffney, has put the two together to Shanakiha. So we'll put that maybe in
put it in the link.
But I did he does storytelling nights in Dublin, Amsterdam, London, Belfast, Limerick, which is his county as well. And because I'm from Limerick.
Yeah.
And just to mention that. And so they're wonderful. And I went to my first one on Friday night and it was beautiful. But the theme was friendship, and I brought up about my friend Kevin. Now it's interesting because he came up in my mind a few times here, so I can't but mention him. He died of cancer in 2018 and I miss him. He was one of those friends that would call me up and say, Patricia, what are you doing Saturday? And we would spend the day together. And he'd say, Patricia, I've never had a bad day when I'm with you.
Oh. That was weirdly insane.
That's my track that we put in.
I felt that. I was like, oh, that's sad, and we're laughing. But the memories he's left me, he was lovely. But his parents were Irish, and he was born here. But Kevin and I met in my 20s. He was the first person, which was interesting, that considered himself English, but his parents were Irish. And I'm like, are you not Irish? So there goes to identity with regard to... That's so
interesting. I'll let you carry on. I just want to say, if there's anybody out there who has that same story, that you have parents that are Irish or you have Irish heritage, but you identify as English, come and talk to us because we would love to get inside your head.
Or even if you were born in Ireland and you moved at a young age, anything.
Yeah, because I had been here, when I met him, I was probably at 3 or 4 years, 4 years, maybe around that. And I was meeting Irish people when I came to London first. I was going to places like Claddering, that's right, it's gone now.
Yeah.
And Irish pubs. My brother was here at the time. He was singing a lot, playing in a lot of the pubs, and we went to a lot of the Irish pubs. So I was meeting a lot of Irish people and second generation Irish people. And Kevin was the first person who was like, whoa, blown away, going, you know. But he hung around a lot of Irish people and stuff. But and there was another reason he came up, and my memory is after kind of going, now you said something, but again, that identity, why I would look back and go, I was like, hold on a minute, tell me more, why is this?
Yeah.
But again, maybe there was an element of judgment in me of like going, oh, this is wrong.
Yeah.
Like, just because everything I knew was, every second generation person I met was identifying as Irish. And he was the first person. And so there was, again, I look back at my old self and I think how much that interfered, my thinking and my beliefs interfered with his. And as I got to know him, I realized that he was as happy with, and he you know, again, looking at Irishness, and maybe I don't know, but again, we can look at negatives, we can look at the bad stuff, and we can kind of identify with that, and then we don't want to, and we cut off from that. For me, I've always thought, I lived in Ireland, I loved it to a certain degree, but I went out of it, and The interesting thing for me is I left without a view of going back.
Do you still hold that view today?
Do you know what I did? I'm going to share this with you.
Mm-hmm.
This young girl in me, I had 3 bank accounts. One that was opened at school in like 5th year or something, as they do.
Yeah.
And then another one working, and then another one something else. I closed them all. Now, it's so hard to open a bank account in any country. And years later, I'm like, how silly that I even thought I could have just left a bit of money. Because then, 10 years later, you go back and you can't open a bank account for love nor money.
Yeah.
Which is a very famous Irish saying. You couldn't do it for love nor money.
Yeah.
And so I just thought, I went back then, 10 years prior, and I was like, I really didn't feel like I was going to come back.
Yeah.
And that made me reflect on, whoa, because at the time I was on autopilot. I don't think I was thinking straight in a way, or maybe I was. Anyway, but I had brothers and sisters that came out of Ireland, but they always felt like we're going to go back and then having children and stuff. So that was interesting as well.
Yeah.
Which is interesting you say that, because I did the same when I left Canada. I like purged my whole life.
Yeah,
There's nothing.
There's no reason for you to go. There's no connection there anymore.
Yeah, and I lots of Canadians who come over who are expats have clothes, or they save their car, they leave a bank account. No, I got rid of everything.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Same. Yeah.
And I was like, that chapter is done.
Yeah.
Which, in hindsight, again, I'm like, should I have done that? But I felt
Never
such a
say
pull
never, I suppose,
to England.
yeah. But it's like that. I would learn from that now, going, at the end of the day, it doesn't, just because you leave, but it just, again, it goes back to mentality. It goes back to that mindset. It goes back to what we're not aware of what's going on inside when we're making these decisions.
Yeah.
And that's what I think the balance of life for me is that reflection. And it's not overthinking. And in anything, it's quietening the overthinking mind. But it's that nice balance of going, I'm making this decision, having that thought process and going, okay, is this the best thing to do in the long term? Because we can make decisions for the short term, which it was kind of like, I'm out. Let's cut everything. And then realizing practically it would have been better if I left one of the bank accounts open. And that's just an example. But it's just an example.
Where do you... I obviously know that you are now of the mindset, after all of the hard work that you've done, about staying very open and not closing yourself off to opportunities and saying never say never. Yeah, basically. But as of now, as of today, do you ever see yourself going back to Ireland? I know it's not.
She's like,
never.
I know.
No, it's a beautiful idea. On the contrary. It's a beautiful question, and I'm so glad you brought up about staying open, because that is my piece of advice to any children I meet, and younger people especially. And I've been working with different clients, different ages, more kind of older, 40s, 50s, 30s. My passion would be to work with younger people, and I will get there eventually. And my piece of advice, and this is only in the last 6 months to a year, stay open. Stay open, stay open. Because when we close around pain and emotion, we also close around the best parts of us. We could potentially close around the emotion, close around the mindset, close around everything, and we also close the best parts of us, and then they get buried with the stuff. But again, that's staying open, that life and human experience and human existence has good and bad. It's got horrible times, it's got great times. It's just, again, it's that yin and yang. It's that balance. It's like Taoism. It's like that pendulum. It kind of goes from one side to the other. But there's a place in the middle. And even that spectrum, it's not about being down middle, going, okay, it's not this way, this way. There's a space in the middle of that. You're kind of like balancing both, rather than too much one way or too much that way in being drawn down. And I suppose that's what I've learned most of all, that life is in the balance. So thank you for bringing that up, because that is one of my primary tips for people. Learn to stay open. And that phrase, never say never. And we learn. And life is about learning. Until I take my last breath, I will learn something. And
So we don't know if you'd ever go back to Ireland is the answer.
Sorry, did I not? The interesting thing is, when I went home, and I mentioned it before the poem, I went home for Christmas 2021, and the flights were, it was the third lockdown. So I said, oh, I'll stay a week. My mother was so happy.
Oh.
And then I went, so I didn't book any flight. And then I'll stay another week. I'll stay another week. I came home after Easter.
Homer's like loving his life.
It was the most amazing 4 months. And can I just mention my beautiful mum? I mean, like, actually, my mum and myself are very alike, and we kind of hit heads sometimes.
Man, is that hit home?
Whoa. So I suppose, and Mum, if you're listening to this, it's not a bad thing, but it's like if somebody had told me that I was going to go home and spend more than 2 weeks at home in my home place, which I left when I was 18, I would have said...
You would have closed yourself, wouldn't you? Yeah.
Look,
do you see how much I'm learning, guys?
I would have said, no way, never, never. Because I would have thought, I love my mum. She's a wonderful lady, and it's great spending time with her. And if you ever meet her, she is fun. You'll know where I get my
Yeah.
You know where I get my PhD.
Yeah.
But
you left
we
so
had,
open. You had this beautiful experience.
Yeah.
We kind of hit heads together. It's similar, sometimes. But I think my coaching journey and me as a person growing, it's like that person in the mirror. You do the work and from the inside out, and then the world kind of changes, and relationships, it enhances relationships and all of that, and well-being. So week after week after week, and it was such a beautiful, actually quite cathartic, quite therapeutic, quite in the Irish countryside. I wrote a poem. I actually was on the bus from Limerick to Dublin, and I wrote a poem, kind of an epic poem, and I sent it to my family, and I said, and they were like, gosh, you didn't leave anything out. The whole 4 months. My mother, we had nights of therapeutic face masks.
Oh, that's
mud
so
mass.
lovely.
First time in her life.
I love it.
And then when we mentioned mass, we would think the face mask for COVID, and then wait, can I just
yeah.
Go on, yeah.
So I was at home recently, a couple of months ago. My mother said to me, "Can we do mass?" I thought she said mass, and I said, "What church do you want to go to?" And she said, "There's some in the bathroom." And I went, "What are you talking about?" And she said mass, and I said MASKS. And
Brilliant.
I said, "I thought you said mass."
There's just a tiny
She
priest
said,
hanging
"I
out
get
the
that
corner.
in the television." So I had to tell you that.
A new age art.
So the whole different
Brilliant.
mask around. So when some people don't understand, some Irish people, I didn't understand. But that 4 months was amazing and beautiful. And again, it was me. It was me who leaned into the beauty of the countryside. I was in the poem, I had said, a beautiful place from COVID to hide, because I was hiding in London. But I was locked down. And another beautiful moment, because I left home when I was 18, and I suppose when I look back at the 18-year-old who left Ireland, I was a little bit like, get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
And that's sad. I look back and I go, I give her a hug and say, it was fine and my life has been great. But my mum said to me when the time came and I was leaving, and she was like, "Are you sure you're leaving?" And I was like, "Yeah." And we had this moment of like tears. I was like, "Please don't, I'm crying." And she looked at me and she said, "Patricia, all I can say, it's been a pleasure getting to know you."
Oh.
That is a reflection of me going home for 20. Did I tell you how long I was in London? 20-something years. My memory's going.
20-something.
Yeah.
A long time. I can't believe it. Like,
Has it flown?
I've flown.
Yeah.
And going home for weekends. I never miss a family occasion.
Yeah.
And we have a big family, and we never miss an opportunity to come together and celebrate. And then going away and going back and going home and then going for a week or 2 weeks.
So you've always kept very much a sort of foot or a finger in the
all
country.
the time going home. And I used to say to people, I have the best of both worlds. I live in the city.
Yeah.
I adapted very well, but I love going home to the countryside. I love my brother has the farm, the cows and the kids. And I never miss the First Holy Communion, confirmation if I can at all. I mean, the times I have has been, something has been going on. So that was a reflection of going home, and then planting myself there and being there. And with all the work I had done from the inside out, and just that therapeutic journey of appreciation, and I've written some beautiful poetry around that Irish countryside. One of my favorite poems, and I hope to share it someday, the night before I left, the place I used to go as a kid, and I wrote a poem called When I Was Young, and that for me is one of my favorites, because I was in the place, and this poem, just words rose out of me, and it kind of summed up my 4 months at home for me. And so yeah, long answer to a short question, but you know me.
Stay open, guys.
Yeah.
That's the message. Just stay open. It's so funny when you were talking about staying open. I had an image in my head of like a door, and I just thought it was so clear to me what you were saying when I imagined the door staying open. Like anything can come in and out, and some bad things might come in, but they will always make their way around the room and go back out again. Whereas if you close the door, nothing ever gets in, not even the good stuff.
Yeah,
it's so beautiful.
See,
listen,
this is Trisha as your mentor, because this is the kind of wisdom that you will end up coming out with.
It's so beautiful.
But that's what the image that came to my mind. I was like, it's just like a door. If you shut off yourself like a door, nothing gets in.
Yeah.
But
you shut off the good, you shut in the good and the bad, and it all gets mixed up, and you don't know what's what. Whereas you leave it open, that airiness, you can let things go and out, and that ease and flow. And you talk about identity in Irish, that, you know, hard grafters, they can work. And there was even a Mankind in Amazon, the story of all of us, and actually there was a section of it where the Irish workers went, and they were like, I can't remember, but one Irishman was like the equivalent of like 3 horses. That's how much power, working power from here. But again, sometimes we talk about that emotions around Irish, and so yeah, staying open is really important.
Yeah.
I lost my train of thought there.
No, that's fine. It's actually a good time to move on to. We're still staying within the realm of identity, but I've got some bullet points here just about kind of other forms of Irish identity. So, for example, obviously, me and Shauna are people with Irish heritage. Is that how you would describe yourself? You would say you have Irish heritage?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would personally, I would identify myself as British and Irish. That is the identity that I feel are my foundations of who I am.
I'm only giggling because I was like, I think I would define myself as confused.
But in terms of Irishness, you would say Irish heritage.
Yeah,
I probably would as well. But I would say I'm British and Irish.
You can own it more.
I've mentioned this on an episode before, but I will just quickly say that my brother's dad is Irish, and he obviously raised me as a child. He was my stepdad, and he introduced a lot of Irish culture into my life. So I feel I feel very connected to the culture, as well as, you know, it being from my ethnicity, my blood, my ancestry, whatever you want to say, which is why I feel quite strongly identified with my Irish heritage. Anyway, you would say Irish heritage, I would say British and Irish, you would say Irish, I'm assuming. Do you ever feel British? Do you ever feel like...
Would you call yourself a Londoner?
Yeah.
She's like, guys, stop throwing
This
these
is too heavy. For this.
No, the answer is no. 150% no.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, no.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's fair.
No is no. Short and sweet.
That's very unusual for me.
Yeah.
No, but
there's no wrong answer, by the way.
No,
if it's
no,
no, it's no,
right,
it's
wrong.
fine. But then it got me thinking about the other types of Irish identity. Surely you mentioned something before about people who are born on the island of Ireland, but maybe move when they're very young, like they maybe move when they're babies. Like, again, anybody out there listening to this, if you are of these, if this applies to you, please speak to us about it. We'd be so interested to know. Like, I wonder.
But I say that because I was born in Australia, and I lived there till I was 5. But I wouldn't call myself Australian.
You wouldn't.
I mean, I have a passport.
With it. Yeah.
But
you wouldn't identify with that part of yourself. Oh, that's what I mean. It's so funny, isn't it?
But when I moved, like, I would say I used to say when we first moved to Canada that I was English because I loved going home. Like, I always said, oh, we're flying home for Christmas. But now I'm at the point where, like, when I was moving here, I was literally being like, oh yeah, I'm moving home. And then when I've been at home, I'll fly back home for Christmas or summer.
What, back to Canada?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, where actually is my home?
Yeah, I'd probably say I'm Canadian, I think, because it's superficial, but my accent is so Canadian that it's just the easiest one to align with, where people will be like, yeah, you're Canadian.
But I mean, yeah, I suppose, yeah.
But that's amazing. Can I just intrude here? Intrude. Home. So you asked me and I said no. But when I go home and I tell you tomorrow I'm going home, and I'm not going home tomorrow, but I'm going home.
Yeah.
And when I'm in Ireland,
you say I'm going
home tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I've been doing that for years.
Yeah.
So I have 2 homes.
Yeah. And I think many people will, especially people from the Irish diaspora. Like, like I said earlier, immigration is a massive part of the Irish story, and I would imagine there are so many people like yourself. And we all know now, because of the housing crisis and bad things that are going on the island, a lot of young people are immigrating to places like Australia, places like Canada. And I would imagine they would probably still, they would say that. They would say, I'm going home, when they're talking about flying back to...
familiarity and comfort, though. Like, it's like something in your soul just is aligned when you're home or home.
Yeah.
But again, it's different when you're traveling or something. It's when you settle in a way. Because if I could imagine a 20-something-year-old kind of going home, but then I'm going back to Australia and go back to America and going back to London in a way. Whereas I kind of go, I'm going home tomorrow, I'm going back tomorrow, or back, you could say. So I suppose there's a bit of a difference. Can I just mention as well, over the years, like I've connected with a lot of Irish people. My mum is 86, 87. My dad died at 87 in 2017. That's a huge thing for people that I've met who've left Ireland. When the family home is there and your parents are there.
Yeah, then it's
so I felt blessed to have my parents so long, because they were home. Whereas, so how do you define home? Like, so I met people whose parents died younger or whatever, they were here, and 10 years later, and then maybe one of the family got the farm or the land or the house, or the house was sold. There was no home left anymore. It was Ireland. I'm going back to Ireland home.
Yeah.
But I go back to my little country, Ireland, Irish side plot.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's true though. Like, I think that's where I'm in. I'm 20-something, barely. And we have no family home in Canada now. Yeah. My dad's passed away and my mom is traveling. And so I went home this summer and it felt very much less like home because there was no base, and London doesn't quite feel like home because it's not my, we move around a lot. So yeah, I get what you're saying. Like you lose that sense of home in a sense. Yeah. Because it's not the building.
You haven't got a base. It's the people, isn't it? That's what makes it up, I suppose.
Like people. Yeah. Going to our uncle's house that we always go to, that is home.
Up north.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's, I suppose, leads to the other question of what is home, but we'll save that for another. We'll save that for another episode. So I suppose that I would like this conversation to steer in the direction of Irishness, sort of in the 21st century. Like, as we know, Ireland now is incredibly multicultural. It's becoming a very multicultural place, and the face of Irishness, what Irishness looks like, is changing now all the time. And I notice a lot. It's something I wanted to touch on because I feel a way about it. It makes me feel something. And we have it here in Britain, but it's been going on in Britain for a very long time. And I understand this is only a very small amount of people, and it's I'm generalising. I don't think everybody thinks this way, but I notice a lot that people of colour on the island of Ireland are often, they're not Irish. Do you know what I mean? People will say, no, you're not Irish, you're from wherever, or the age-old question of asking somebody, oh, where are you from? And they give you the answer, but it's not the answer that you want. What you're saying is, where are you, often the follow-up question is, no, where are you actually from? Or where are your parents from? There seems to be this kind of disbelief or dissatisfaction. That's a really good word. Or just like this attitude of like, well, no, you can't be from here.
because you don't look like what I think people from here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But despite everything that we were just talking about, you know, being born in a place and that place raising you and you being part of that culture is an identity. And I just wanted to make our stance very clear on this podcast that people of colour in Ireland and in Britain, they are Irish and they are British. So anybody that thinks those things, we don't want to hear it. It's basically what I'm trying to say. It's not the type of place where you can come and spout that kind of stuff, because we're not. Yeah, that's not our narrative. You know. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say on that. But
I think it goes back to being open, though. Like, my definition of Irishness or an Irish person is not fixed.
Mm-hmm. You're right, but it also goes back to like heritage as well. Like you said, how do you define like Irish to you and that Irish heritage? And I'm just Irish. So again, no matter where, there's a lot of movement in the world, and the world has got smaller in the last time with flying and Ryanair and cheap flights and all of this. Sorry, no. And so again, it's that inclusion.
Yeah, exactly.
So I have kind of a love-hate relationship with social media.
Don't we all, guys?
But I have seen some amazing videos that I love and bring joy to my heart with Irish dancing, the language. Like, it's very easy to go to Ireland with a different heritage, no matter where in the world, and just learn English, you know, and speak English. There are people learning English and Irish.
I know.
And then there was a brilliant one where this young girl was in Spain, and apparently she was on the beach or something. These two Irish women said in Irish passing by, I wonder, is she a man or a woman or something, a girl or a boy?
Oh, I've seen that video, and they say it in Irish. Yeah.
But she spoke Irish, and they didn't realise that she spoke Irish.
She like whips around.
I thought it was the funniest, but she did it so positively. Yeah. She wasn't doing this video in a negative way. Yeah. She was just telling the story about what happened, because they presumed the way she looked that she wouldn't have the Irish language, and she did. So she then started. Anyway, I watched it and I thought, this is very funny, but actually when I left Ireland, I went to Belgium, and I remember, oh my God, do we have time for me to tell it?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
The Irish young girl leaves, goes to a place like Leuven. They make Stella Artois there, apparently. University city. Went there. My first job, guess, on a farm.
No way.
With the cows? Oh,
that is hilarious.
Potato farm.
You literally put a stamp on your forehead that said, I am Irish.
You couldn't write it. That is so funny.
Let me find the most Irish thing in Belgium.
So the Leuven is a Flemish speaking. So I went with a friend, and we were on this. I look back, because the machines brought in the potatoes, and then we were on a conveyor belt to make sure the eyes were out. Peas are all done, and they bagged them and chipped them and did all that kind of stuff. So myself and my friend were, because they were all speaking different languages, a lot of Spanish used to come over as well. The money was good, and there was Flemish speaking. There was these old ladies, but we started kind of speaking Irish, because obviously I think they could speak English, or some of them they couldn't, but we started speaking Irish. But we spoke so much and we talked so much. We went in one morning, there was a conveyor belt, like, because they put one of us, say, you stand there and you stand here.
Because you weren't allowed to be near each other.
Yeah.
Because we
talked too much. They couldn't understand what we were talking about. But it wasn't that they weren't speaking, but maybe they were quieter than us. Yeah. And we were so upset, like, that they had put us the furthest away, because obviously the ladies around had complained about us in some way. And then every time we spoke, we were trying to use our Irish language. So we were like, well, if you can speak, we're going to speak our own language. I mean, very young and very... but I just thought of that there now, because I often told that stories over the years. The Irish girl leaves the Irish farm of cows and ends up in Belgium. And how could you write that? Like, I got a job in a potato farm. And I remember one day I fell into a hole and I had to go all the way home, and the smell of, like, there was literally walking along, and you know, in farms there can be like and I walked in my Doc Martin, and I remember I had to go all the way home, and the smell on the bus, because sinky, horrible. And I was like, how could this be? I leave Ireland, the farm, and I end up with this on the bus with a muddy boot that stank.
I feel like the last, I suppose not question, but the last bullet point that I think we'd maybe touch on is you mentioned something before briefly, which was a really good point. And me and Shauna have spoken about this on a previous episode as well, is that you said that the world is now becoming smaller.
So small, yeah.
And that I think because of the internet and, you know, easy travel, we're becoming, well, in the West anyway, becoming more connected than ever. And what we, you know, what's happening, especially online, is there's no kind of cultural scarcity is becoming, you know, very, it's like null now. There is none. Everybody shares a kind of online culture. So my question, I suppose, or, you know, the next thing that I'd like to talk about is, for you, what do you think Irish identity, or any identity, considering the world seems to be shrinking so much, kind of looks like going forward? How do you hold on to a significant identity in this shrinking world, and in this world where everybody is connected, and this kind of one internet culture seems to be the dominating?
Yeah, we've talked about this. Yeah, there's internet studies that show that culture is becoming diluted, and that not necessarily within a country, but because we share everything online, it's put as like a mild culture. So do you think, how would you hold on to rich Irishness without the dilution? And because you want to share, you know?
It's a fascinating question. I mean, but again, it goes back to what I said earlier on, self-identity. Can we not be allowed to have our self-identity and hold on to the richness that we feel is what we want to hold on to? Like being here and people saying, fair play to you, you haven't lost your Irish accent in all that time. And I'm like, how would I do a thing like that? It's got me into some trouble, but it's got me out of more. And then when I go home to Ireland, I love when I go over and people go, that long, you haven't lost your accent. And we'll talk about accents maybe sometime. But again, it's like, no matter what I thought about Ireland, no matter about my feelings when I left, there was an Irishness within me that there was always that feeling of something more, you know, to it in a way. So I've kept, but it wasn't always conscious. So it goes back to the what's in the inside out journey. I agree that things can get diluted, but I'll tell you what, I've loved living in London. The multicultural
it is amazing.
Very, very
over the years, because, but also remember, and we won't go into too much depth about it, but when you live in an isolated place, there's like, I can't stress enough that every negativity, everything that's going on, it has a fear underneath it, and fear is part of our survival process. So somebody who obviously looks different than us, speaks different than us, has different thoughts than us, there can be just an underpinning fear for our safety, protection, survival. And remember, we've also been fed with papers, newspapers, the media, kind of, even from a time when we didn't have social media, this, you know, stereotyping and stuff. But again, it's all down to our safety, our protection, our survival, which is our primal instinct inside, and the negativity and the mindsets can be, the root is a fear. Until we go to the root, we will only be looking at symptoms. And the positive mindset is all about the love, which is the opposite of fear. So again, talking about cultures and the dissolving, it's about what's going on inside us.
It's like turning in.
It's when we know what's going on inside of us, we find our self-identity, we find the identity, and then we find that richness within us that connects us with our background, like you mentioned, heritage, where we're from, where our parents are from, grandparents are from, or going back, or how we feel. Because, and again, it's just stories of, I remember somebody who always felt that they had a connection to Jewish something, but never knew anything.
Yeah.
And then did some ancestry and realized, because I had a fascination with Hebrew and wondered why. And then all of a sudden something pops up. So again, it can be a feeling inside of us and we don't understand it. But when we reflect and take time to pause and reflect, and then you go down the ancestry route or something that we have now that we didn't have before, you can find that the reason for that feeling or that feeling. So I don't know if I've answered your question really.
No, I think you have. Yeah, I think it's
so.
you've said, it's keeping that consciousness so you can realize what the culture is that you're.
Yeah, what
you're
connections you have.
Yeah, I agree. And I think also I would say consume culture content online for me is a big way to keep specific cultures clear and alive. Don't only consume this internet culture. Make sure that you seek out specific, whatever culture you want to learn about or whatever culture you're from or whatever culture you feel connected to, seek out that content. So like right now, me and Shauna want to, learn a bit of Irish. I very purposely and intentionally follow so many Irish speaking creators. I really follow Irish specific content. And I feel like people who make that kind of content, please keep doing so, because I feel like it's really important for any culture all around the world. Everybody who feels connected to a culture, please keep making that content, because it's really, it's like bringing it into the modern day, like bringing culture and making it accessible to everybody. Yeah, absolutely.
Interestingly, I found this lady on TikTok and she just came up and she does Irish for parents at home.
Oh, I've seen her. I follow her as well.
So I actually thought that was interesting, because the big thing learning Irish going to school for me was that we didn't have any place to learn to speak it.
Yeah.
So when you submerge yourself in a language, you learn it easier. Now the kids in the last years at the Gaeltacht areas, they spend 3 weeks in school holidays and stuff, and sometimes then they work there, and again you immerse yourself in it. And I want to do that with my friend Marissa as well. But so doing that online, as you say, and then connecting with somebody who's helping parents to speak the language every day.
Yeah.
And I know my niece, she's fluent in Irish. I love to hear her speaking to my great niece Isla. She all those words, but it's great for us as well, because when I hear it, I remember them. It's that ripple effect, and I talk a lot about in coaching, my coaching as well, that ripple effect. We look at the person in the mirror, we do work, and then it ripples out to people. And I love that analogy. And again, the Irish language, the culture, what you feed grows. Yeah. So be careful where you put your energy, because that's where the awareness flows and stuff and all of that. We'll touch about it in Therapy Thursdays.
Yeah.
In the future.
Amazing. Okay, so to wrap up, how are we summarising? Trisha, what is Irishness? What is it to you?
I was going to say, I think to wrap up, we should choose a word that you think strongly aligns with Irishness.
Or like
just one word.
Can you sum it up in one word? And we know it's not the full summary of it, but if you had to just pick one word, what would your word be for Irishness?
Well, the first one that came out is funny, and then it was like, I'm grand.
Grand. That's so funny. Yeah, that's so.
I like
that's every
it,
other word, isn't it?
Yeah, it really does. It'll be grand.
Shauna, what will yours be?
Probably embrace. I feel like
that's
Irish
lovely.
people are very embracing.
They are. That's lovely. Yeah, I feel like you won't meet.
I feel like
I'm
embracing myself.
I feel like you won't meet a better bunch of people than Irish people. I feel like they are a very welcoming, warm, accepting people in general. So that was a gorgeous word. I would say crack. I would. That is that's what I think of is crack. Yeah. And I have to mention Dane comedian. I follow him. Brilliant. He's really funny. And I watched an interview with him the other day on another podcast. And the podcast they were talking. It's about comedy. The podcast, and the host of the podcast is also Irish. And he asked Dane, "What is crack? Can you define it?" And his answer was the best answer I've ever heard. His answer was, well, if I have to define it for you, you probably don't have it. And I thought, that is absolutely
that is right, though.
Yeah. And I'm like, that to me, the word crack, because people outside of Ireland probably wouldn't be able to describe to you what that means.
That's like if you were to go to Canada and be like, oh, in England they have banter and in Ireland they have crack, people would be like, one, what is banter? Two, what is crack? And how are they related?
Explain it. And I feel like it really is the reason I think of the word crack, if we're going to choose one word to sum it up, is because that it's so Irish. I feel like it's just this kind of it's this kind of inexplainable thing. You have to feel it, and you have to be there, and you have to experience it to really know what it is. So that would be.
And as the time goes on, I'd like to bring some words that we use as a family and friends growing up, but you don't hear that often anymore. So I might throw them in as the third.
Please do.
And the people go,
we'll just,
and like things that I've been caught here with. So I think embracing funny crack. And grand.
And grand. They're all grand. Guys, thank you so much for listening, watching. Please continue to tune in. As I said, this is going to be a once a month series for now. I feel like if it's, goes well, which I think this has, we will try and make it more often, maybe twice a month, and see where we go from there. Oh, I have to also quickly just say thank you for all of our new followers on Instagram. We've got 70 TikTok followers. No, Instagram followers.
I was like, whoa.
We've got 35 TikTok followers.
Almost 100.
Almost at 100. Our podcast has been downloaded 10 times. Someone out there has downloaded it from Spotify.
And it's not us. Not just us.
It's not us. So thank you so much.
And can I just say, sorry, if anyone has any questions for the Irish mental fitness, positive intelligence coach, all about anything, I'm happy to address those if anybody has
we'll leave all of her.
We will put
Caitlin will leave all the things
Patricia's
below.
details down in the
We'll put them in the Instagram post, on Spotify, YouTube.
But anything to discuss, we'll say on the next week as well. If anyone watching kind of wanted to put a question on.
Yeah, absolutely. If you've got any questions.
Almost like, what were those columns in newspapers? Dear...
Agony aunts. Exactly.
This is
your
opportunity.
Anybody that has any questions that you feel like Trisha would be, good for her to talk about or good for her to answer, please do write them below and we'll pass them on.
Or DM us if you want them to be
DM us on Instagram, whatever. You know how to get us. I'll put our handle all on the screen and I'll put all that information. But thank you so much, guys.
And now we're going to have some Irish soda bread that I made. It's not as good as my mother's
or
delicious. My sister's probably, but you know what? I'm going to enjoy it.
We are. It's
with a bit of Kerrygold.
Thank you so much, guys. And as always, we're going to say, Sinead.
Sinead.
Bye.